Zimbabwe's former finance minister and MDC Alliance leader Tendai Biti has reportedly been released. Biti was nabbed earlier today while trying to cross the border to seek political asylum in Zambia. However, reports say he had already crossed the border to Zambia when Zimbabwe officials arrested him. Biti is the first senior opposition politician to be arrested in the aftermath of last week's disputed presidential election won by Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa. The former finance minister is accused of publicly declaring MDC's Nelson Chamisa as president just a day after the poll. He is also alleged to have incited the deadly violence that claimed 6 lives. Now, Chadya Tapiwa Diamond, our Afro worldview expert, joins us in studio for more analysis on this topic. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Diamond.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to our viewers.
Great. Now, let's start with Mr. Tendai Biti having been arrested. I mean, you agree with me that Zimbabwe has been in the headlines post-elections for a number of reasons, and one of them being this, that the leader of the MDC has been arrested. Let's talk about the charges, first of all, against him, as well as the timing of his arrest and now his subsequently released. I mean, many would say that it speaks to what the MDC has been saying, that there's a clampdown on them in light of the allegations of fraud against ZANU-PF and the ZEC.
No, thank you very much. I do concur with your averments now. The arrest of Tendai Biti is a continuation of the clampdown of the opposition members by the ZANU-PF ruling party. The reason why they are doing that is because this has always been the part of ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF has always done this. We saw that just after the elections that the total emasculation of the people's political, social and economic power has been complemented into a strategy which is meant to reduce their political, social and economic power to the level of Stone Age scavengers. Therefore, they are available for manipulation and abuse by Mnangagwa, ZANU-PF and its cronies. So we see now that Tendai Biti has been arrested. The allegations are saying that he was part and parcel of the group, of the mob, which was demonstrating, and he was part and parcel of that. They say they've got evidence, so they say, of him burning things and being part of that demonstration, you know, which is not the fact. He was not part of those. They've also said that he was also being arrested for declaring that Nelson Chamisa was the winner. But if we go back into the days, we'll realize that he was then questioned and released. He was not arrested. But today we have seen that there was a warrant of arrest which has been circulating on social media, where the charges are there, the written charges are an embarrassment to the police in Zimbabwe. The charges there are an embarrassment to the whole system of the security sector in Zimbabwe. So his arrest now, of course, we thank God that he was released, is based on trumped up charges and a clampdown on the opposition party members. Why? Because of the issue of elections. Instead of celebrating, we have seen that ZANU-PF has been arresting the people, the members of the opposition party, which is not right, which is not good.
And now, sir, excuse me, now the MDC has also come out saying that it's going to challenge this in the court of law, which, according to my understanding, has to be by this Friday. I mean, how do you see this playing out, this court challenge being filed by Friday, especially in light of the inauguration of Mr. Mnangagwa that has been set for this Sunday?
According to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the MDC Alliance has got 7 days where they have to do their court application, and currently they are still within those 7 days. So the inauguration date is set, and up until the MDC Alliance or any other member who has lost an election files their papers into court, up until there's a challenge in court, that is when then the inauguration date has to be changed, as in accordance to the Constitution. The Constitutional Court will then have about 14 days to make a ruling on that. So it then means that the inauguration, the moment the MDC Alliance files its papers, the inauguration will have to be moved by at least 14 days. After a judgment, after a decision is made by the Constitutional Court, they can then, within 48 hours, of course, have the inauguration. And the inauguration will be based on the dictates, on the judgment that the Constitutional Court would have passed.
Now, let's talk about this court challenge by the MDC. I mean, I've read up on analysts saying that the fact that the election has already been endorsed by our very own President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as other African heads of state. I mean, the Burundi President Pierre Nkurunziza also endorsed them, as well as Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, many are saying that this might pose a challenge, just basically weaken the court challenge that the MDC is going to file. Are you of the same view?
Not necessarily. The court challenge has got nothing to do with people sending their congratulatory messages. The facts and the reasons, the reasoning behind the challenge of this, of the announcement of the results in favor of Emmerson Mnangagwa is because there is allegedly so, according to the evidence that has been circulating, according to the V11 forms that, excuse me, according to the V11 forms that have been there, that are there within the hands of the opposition party, the MDC Alliance, it shows that there's been figures have been cooked by ZANU-PF. There's been issues in Harare, there's been issues in almost each and every constituency. So they believe that they've got enough reasoning, they believe that they've got enough evidence to challenge that. And it is a fact because we have seen that there were anomalies before people went to vote. The number of people who voted in the presidential election do not tally with the number of people who voted in the parliamentary elections, the council elections. But then you're faced with the situation where you get 3 ballot papers at the same time. So now to say people only voted for the president and not for the councillor and the MP, it is not the fact because these numbers are not tallying up. So the ZEC then announced in favor of Emmerson Mnangagwa when the numbers were not verified, even by the opposition party. So there is enough evidence, overwhelming evidence, according to the reports that MDC Alliance has been saying. So now we just wait for the war welders to wait, obviously, for them to bring their papers to court, to file their matter to court, and that is then when everyone else is going to see the evidence that MDC Alliance has.
All right. Just moving on to what is also currently playing out in Zimbabwe. I mean, still on the MDC, coming out with allegations that there have been night raids where some of their members or supporters have been abducted.
Yes.
And some have been intimidated. I mean, what more can you tell us around this?
Probably if we can go back to the year 2000, the formation of the opposition party, the left wing in Zimbabwe, there was a lot of violence. People were butchered. There was an abuse of human rights. That happened as well in 2002 presidential elections. It also happened in 2008, where Morgan Tsvangirai had won the election, and then ZANU-PF did not release the results, and there was a runoff where many people were killed. So this is the hand of the army in Zimbabwe. The army has been unleashed on people the same way the army was unleashed to the people of Zimbabwe in 2008. So people have been killed, some people have been missing. And the international community is watching. ZANU-PF has been saying up through Emmerson Mnangagwa to say Zimbabwe is open for business. And there's protection. The Zimbabwe now government is saying there's a new road to go to legitimacy and constitutionalism. And the deaths of people, we saw that the extrajudicial killings of the people of Zimbabwe who were shot by the army from the back, that is totally against the international human rights law. And such atrocities, such abuse of power by the regime in Zimbabwe, it leaves a lot to be desired. It says the bigger story that probably the opposition parties have been saying in Zimbabwe, that people are not safe. Yes, the elections might have lacked violence, but the intimidation of the army, the presence of the army in the rural areas, in urban areas, is overwhelming, and that on its own is intimidation, which means that the political field, the election field was not level, you know. So for the army to be sent into the community and shoot at people like that, it then confirms the allegations that had been said by the opposition parties of army intimidation, you know. So it also further goes on to the issue of the power crisis within ZANU-PF, because the president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, said he is not aware that the army was deployed, and is going to have an inquiry into that. Then we have the commissioner of police, Chadya, who came on and said, We asked for assistance from the army because we're short-staffed, because we had deployed our members of the police to the polling stations. Then we had SB Moyo saying also that it was some rogue elements, those were criminal elements, which were wearing the army uniform and shooting at people. So 3 different reasoning for the gross abuse of human rights from the government, from the ruling party, is not on, and it leaves a lot to be desired and speaks of the vacuum and the power crisis within ZANU-PF.
And you've somewhat answered my question, Mr. Diamond. My last question in closing would have been that the deployment of the army on unarmed civilians speaks of a bigger problem, like you've mentioned, but also it brings questions of whether this is indeed a new Zimbabwe that was supposed to be formed post these elections, or is everything that Mr. Mnangagwa been saying to the international world basically just talks to cover up, the negativity that we saw under the previous administration? Well,
during the inauguration speech of Emerson Mnangagwa, he came and he said Zimbabwe is open for business. Zimbabwe is for everyone. He shared a good, warm, welcoming message, and everyone was cheering to that. But within a very short space of time, we have seen the true colors of Emerson Mnangagwa, the true colors of ZANU-PF. They say a leopard does not change its spots, and we have seen that coming to manifest. Once a tyranny, always be a tyranny. The gross human rights violations for the people of Zimbabwe, on the people of Zimbabwe, it just confirms what has been ongoing within Zimbabwe. We speak of the Gukurahundi within the 1980s, where many civilians were killed by the army, spearheaded and led by Emerson Mnangagwa. He then said to the people of Zimbabwe and the rest of the world to say, let bygones be bygones. As we speak now, let's just speak of the 7 people who were killed. The number is 7, but the sources say the number is higher. And those people were killed after the elections. He's going to say probably this very same thing. Let bygones be bygones. Poor families, the very same people of Zimbabwe who are suffering, who are trying to make ends, who are hawkers, who are vendors in Zimbabwe, are the ones who got killed. And they are struggling, trying to make ends meet. And it is the same ZANU-PF which has brought the people of Zimbabwe into these dire circumstances. So it is very sad. And it goes on to show who really ZANU-PF is. And we believe that the people of Zimbabwe should be patient, and they should continue joining hands and then be in solidarity with whatever is happening. Because at some point, we'll have to just see what the election, what the outcome is going to be in court. And the people of Zimbabwe remain optimistic because they voted. When they voted for their leader, the leader of their choice. And we presume, we hope that the truth will come out.
All right. Mr. Diamond, thank you so much for your time. That was our Afro Worldview expert, Mr. Chadya Tapiwa Diamond, just giving us an analysis of the current situation in Zimbabwe.